Sue, thank you. Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I just want to start by opening. First of all, I just want to thank Coach Babers for his contributions and his commitment to our program, our university, and our community. He's a class act and a class person. And that made yesterday's decision more difficult, made the conversation more difficult. But I want to thank Coach Babers for his contributions, what he's done for the program, and just the way he's conducted himself. He's represented our university, and I think our community in a first-class fashion. The decision was not a knee-jerk reaction, not an emotional decision. I've evaluated the program on a consistent basis. To me, one of the things it really boils down to is November. We've not had the success in November. 2 years ago, we were 5-4, coming off momentum, road victory at Virginia Tech, Boston College, lost the last 3, 5, and 7. Last year, we started 6-0. We lose 5 in a row, have to beat BC to get to 7-5. Same thing this year, start 4-0, 4-3. So there's a consistent theme that we've not been successful in November. And we played meaningful games in November, and that's what you want. You want to be in position where you play games in November that matter. Matter in terms of your bowl position, matter in terms of your status within the conference, your standings within the conference, et cetera, that type of thing. But we've not had the success that we need, and that really is one of the things that stood out to me. I want to thank Coach Nunzio for stepping in. He's done this before. We've spent a lot of time with him in the past 24 hours. Our emphasis on this week is kind of twofold. Number one is let's prepare this team to play Wake Forest, to get bowl eligible. And if we are 6-6, if we win Saturday, we will go to a bowl. Let's honor our seniors the right way. We will do the senior walk after the game on Saturday night, and it's a chance for the community, and I do hope that they come out and support our seniors for everything that they've given to this program and this community. Second is the staff has been in contact with all of our recruits, our commitments for this year, to reinforce that our commitments are solid and to hold this recruiting class together. The search is underway. It started yesterday after my meeting with Coach Babers, the coaching staff, support staff, and the team. It will be thorough. At the same time, we'll try to be as efficient as possible. So with that, let me open it up to questions.
So right here in front to Mark, please.
Good morning. I totally hear your points about November and his record, but what prompted you to make the change with just one game remaining in this regular season?
Two things is, number one, it gives us a week, gives us a head start, right, on doing the due diligence and naming a successor. So let's take advantage of that week. Secondly, is I met with Dino before the season, and I told him the benchmark was 7-5. We met after the Florida State game. I reiterated that. Once that obviously wasn't attainable, it was time to move and make a decision.
Chris?
John, did you give Dino the option of coaching the final game?
I did.
Were you surprised at all that he opted not to?
No, and I told him, I said, it's his decision, and I didn't try to sway him one way or the other.
Emily?
Why Coach Campanelli as the interim guy? Was there any, tactical decision looking forward in that, or was it just get through this game?
I think two things is, number one, he's done it before. He was an interim at Rutgers for a longer period of time, so he's had the experience of that. He's an experienced coach at the high school level, the assistant level. Obviously, New Jersey's a really important recruiting ground for us. We've got a number of verbal commitments from New Jersey, so that factored in as well, Emily.
Jesse?
John, what are you looking for the most in the next head coach
you want somebody who's a really good leader. It's a complex operation to be a head football coach. You need someone who's a really good leader. I think someone who's a really clear communicator, one who can develop. Most Power 5 schools, we're developmental schools, right? Who has that eye for talent? Who can develop that talent? Someone who can communicate and build a staff, not only the assistants, but support staff as well. Someone who's going to represent the values of our university and our community as well.
Go here to Brent.
John, will you be using a search committee?
We will be using a search committee. Haven't finalized that, but yes,
Will you be using
it'll be small.
not only a search committee, but will you be using an outside consulting?
We're working with Bob Bodine, and Bob and I were on the phone yesterday numerous times.
Tommy?
Hey, Jen. Is connections to Syracuse and some background familiarity with the 315, is that going to be an important characteristic of your search?
Tommy, I'm not sure it's got to be direct connection to the 315, but I think experience in the Northeast. I think is, either as a player, as a coach, as an assistant coach, I think is important. It's really hard. I think if you take somebody from the East Coast and put them out in the West Coast, right, you don't have those relationships, those recruiting relationships, those relationships with high school coaches. It's not lost on me that our four most successful coaches, in a sense, Coach Schwartzwalder grew up in Morgantown, right, Northeast. Coach Mack grew up in Maine, UMass. Coach Pasqualoni, Connecticut. Coach Marone, the Bronx. So there is a little bit of history there, and sometimes, history can be a really good teacher.
Go over here to Dan.
John, kind of going off of that, do you look to Syracuse Orange football alumni when you do this search? Is that important to you to find someone who's been through the program, knows the program, has lived it, and can share that?
That would be an attribute, but I want to hire the best person, and the best person who I think can lead this program and lead this program successfully. So I don't want to narrow the pool, and I'm not, okay, they have to be an offensive specialist, they have to be a defensive specialist. You do that, you kind of narrow the pool of candidates. So it's the best coach who I think has the attributes to lead this program, to take this program forward to where we want to go. I would also add to that if there's candidates that have experience in special teams. Special teams is critically important in football. And when special teams is kind of situational football as well.
We'll go to Steve.
John, you talked about being thorough with the search, but also being efficient.
Right.
We know the transfer portal is, the next date is, December 4th?
Right.
Do you have a timeline in mind, and is it realistic to have things narrowed down by December 4th?
Steve, there's not a definitive date per se, but I'm aware of December 4th.
Tyler?
So looking big picture, coaching style, coaching values, what are you looking for with the next head coach of Syracuse football that will be, markedly different than Dino Babers?
Yeah, I'm not sure it has to be markedly different per se, but I'm interested in the philosophy that this person has, right? Their philosophy in terms of offense, their philosophy in terms of defense. I mentioned special teams, recruiting philosophy, player development, evaluators of talent, absolutely critical. I mean, one of the things that's important to any program in the recruiting process is to minimize the misses, right? If you do that, that's one way that you create more depth. So someone who's done that, who's demonstrated they can do that.
Right here in the second row.
Hi, good morning. The success of the football team will have a lot of ripple effects off campus as well. If Dino's benchmark for this final season was 75, what would the goalpost look like for a new coach over X number of years to be able to be nationally competitive, to make CNY an attractive place for alumni to come back to, for people to fill bars in the city, et cetera?
Well, I think, I've said repeatedly numerous times is when you start a season, the goal is to play that 13th game. right? And depending on how good you do in the first 12, depends where that 13th game is and who you play against it. And if you play those first 12 really, really well, maybe you get 13 and more than that. I expect us, and we can be a winning program. We're not that far away. Are there areas that we need to address? Yes. Will they be addressed? Absolutely. But it's not like this is a total reboot. We're a 2-10 team, and you got to totally reboot this. There's strengths, but we've got to analyze our areas where we need to improve upon and take the necessary steps. And that's one of the things the next head coach is going to have to do. Is, all right, what are the areas that we need to refine and we need to get better so that we can have the success that we all covet? In terms of this area, I think this is an attractive area. I mean, if you look at the momentum that this community has, right? Look at it from a micro perspective, and you can start with Micron. But I think there's a lot of momentum in this community. And for a coach, this is a great place to raise a family. So there's a lot of attributes here, and I'm going to emphasize that.
Go to Emily.
What does the athletic department and the university need to continue improving outside of the head coach to make this a competitive program that's on the rise in the ACC?
I think Emily is, and we've done this, is we're continued strategic investment in the program, and do it in a smart way, and do it in a way where you get the best ROI on that investment too. Just because the programs that have the most money, that doesn't necessarily always equate to success. And if you look around the country this year, Emily, you can identify some examples of that, right? So it's, what are the resources that you have? What are the resources that you need that could be most impactful to get your program where we want it to be?
Go to Mark in front. And then go to-
John, another money question. In terms of areas to improve in the program, in response to a question about depth several weeks ago, Coach Babers said that the problem is that his depth is being bought off by other programs. The implication there is that Syracuse can't compete on the NIL landscape. Can you address that? And did his comment rankle you at all, or ruffle your feathers? Were you surprised by that?
Let me answer this two ways. Is number one, look at some of the guys who went in the portal. Where did they go? How much are they playing? Right? Deuce Chestnut, I'm not even sure he's on the active roster at LSU, right? He was a starter here, a 2-year starter. Could have been a 3-year starter. Deuce leaves, all right, we get Jaden Bellamy, right? He just moved himself into a starting position, playing pretty good football, had a pick 6 against Pittsburgh. You look at Jihad Carter, was a starter. Last half of the last season played really, really well. Goes to Ohio State, doesn't play much. The only person who's really left us and gone to the portal and had great success is Jawar Jordan. Well, Jawar got hurt. And the year Jawar got hurt, Sean Tucker was a freshman. And the rest is history in that perspective. So there are guys that are going to go in the portal, but we've also gotten the guys out of the portal who've helped us with our depth as well. In terms of NIL, we've had donors step up, and we've had donors step up the next 48 hours. They've done so quietly, but in a significant way. So I think the narrative is that we're way behind. That's not accurate. Do we have the NIL pool that some schools have? No. Can we be competitive with our peers? Yes.
Tommy.
John, bouncing right off that, have you thought about what that NIL pitch is going to be? Because it is a piece that I'm sure coaches are going to be asking you about.
Absolutely, Tommy. And again, that's the work that's been done and the commitments that have been made is we can tell the coach this is where we are in this space and that we can be competitive. And again, NIL, and I've said this repeatedly, and our coaches have said this repeatedly, it's most important from a retention perspective, right? When we have, regardless of the sport, when you have players that are ACC, all ACC caliber, all America caliber, though it's important to retain those. And if you retain those players, then an offshoot of that, it will help in your recruiting as well.
Over to Dan.
John, what is it about this football program specifically? Why come to Syracuse? Why should a coach take this job over another job? What is the key element or elements here for Syracuse?
Number one, I think there's a commitment from the university to this program, and I thank the chancellor, I thank the board for that. We've had success here. If we had as much as we want, no, but we've had success. Again, I don't think, as I said earlier, this is not a total reboot. You know, we've got really good players. And if you can keep that nucleus together, add to that nucleus, right? Enhance our recruiting efforts, our player development efforts, we can win. We can be very competitive in the ACC. We're not that far away. So that's my pitch. And if you look at also in the terms of the investment that we've made, right? I mean, you look right outside there. New football operations center. We've not made an investment like that, Syracuse Athletics, and I don't know how long. If you look at what we've done with the Dome, if you look at the Ensley Indoor Practice Facility, we have a package of facilities which is competitive with our peers. We're in a good recruiting area, maybe not within a 50-mile radius per se, but within a 4.5-hour radius, right? New England, downstate New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, the mid-Atlantic states. We're an hour, 45-minute flight from Atlanta, an hour and a half from Charlotte. You look at our roster, we have players who are contributing now from those states. Florida as well. So there's a lot to sell here. And there's a lot I think a coach can look at. And one of the things that I've been enthused about over the past 24 hours is the number and also the quality of some people who've reached out to me directly, because I know some coaches directly or indirectly through their representation. There's interest in this job.
Go to Chris Carlson.
John, the buyout money, was that something you had to raise from donors, or is it institutional funds?
We've worked hard internally to deal with that.
Does it impact your ability to pay the next coach? Do you
No.
anticipate being around that $4 million number?
Well, it depends. It depends who the coach is, and it's not only the coach. It's your support staff, right? What your assistant pool is. Your support staff and the recruiting department, player personnel department across the board, strength and conditioning, all of it.
For the fact you have to pay him, it shouldn't.
We've already accounted for that.
Go to Jonathan from Newshouse.
John, you mentioned the importance of the 13th game, and I was just, you said about the 7 and 5 benchmark. I was just wondering, what's the difference here between 6 and 6 and 7 and 5, and how important is it?
Well, I just think 6 and 6. Again, I go back to what I said at the outset, right? You look at November. We haven't had success. Boston College was a very winnable game. Didn't win it. Saturday night was a very winnable game. We didn't win it. You win those two, we're not here today having this conversation. That's the difference.
Go right over here.
As you mentioned, it's been a tough November and even a bit of a tough October for the fan base, a bit frustrating. What is your message to fans ahead of Wake Forest and even a potential bowl game?
Well, I think for Wake Forest, I would hope our fans would come out and support our seniors for what they've given to this program and what they've given to the university and to the community. In terms of going forward, I will do everything I can to hire the right coach who can lead us to the success that we all covet.
Over to Jordan from WJBZ.
Have you spoken to the players about the firing of Coach Davis yesterday and the program moving forward?
I did. I spoke. I met with the assistant coaches. I met with the team, and I met with the support staff as well yesterday.
Go in front of Brent.
John, you've mentioned this as an ascendant brand in the ACC and college football. Tell me how you relate that to the coach you're talking to. How do you
sell this as an ascendant brand? And what are the prerequisites you want from that coach? What are some things that, before they walk in the door, they have to have on the resume?
Well, again, I think, either head coach experience or coordinator experience at the Power 5 level, I think is important. Doesn't mean that a position coach couldn't do it, but it's a really big leap, Brent, for a position coach to a head coach position. So I think, again, head coach experience, coordinator experience, again, somebody who's got the leadership skills, who's got the vision, right, who can communicate. It's so important in coaching today to be a good communicator and be able to relate and communicate to the young men that they're going to be leading. In terms of an ascendant brand, obviously we wish our record was better. But again, when you look at the investment that we're making, that we're committing, I think that speaks volumes in terms of it can be done here.
Rebecca in the second row.
When it comes to bringing this new person in, what does the overall budget look like, and how involved is the chancellor or the board when it comes to obviously wanting a name and a program that will raise recognition and get more people in the know?
I mean, obviously, any decision that I make will have the approval of the chancellor.
Anything on the budget?
Again, I think I've already addressed that. I think we'll be in a position where we can be competitive.
Go to Tommy.
Looking to learn a little bit more about the coaching search, are you working on scheduled calls and meetings with agents? Have you ever just gotten a number and done a cold call?
I've not done a cold call, Tommy. It's been more people calling me. I probably received more calls yesterday than I have since I've been here on a single day.
Ava?
Could you talk a little bit about what the morale of the team is as they head into this final game with a pretty big change happening?
It's hard, right? It's Coach Babers was their coach. He was their leader. They looked up to him. He ultimately was the person who recruited them because he has final say on who's in this program. So I respect and acknowledge. Yesterday was a tough day for our team, and I'll be interested to see how they respond. And one of the messages I gave them yesterday is take care of each other, take care of your brethren, and you know what? And let's play and show out for the seniors, and send them out the right way. That was my two messages to the team yesterday.
We have time for a few more questions. We'll go to Mark Frank first.
Thanks for my questions. To play off of Brent's question, when you broke ground, you did categorize the Syracuse football brand as an ascendant brand. In the wake of how the season has gone and firing Dino with 1 game to play, how would you describe the football brand on November 20th?
I still think there's ways that we are an ascending brand. From a record perspective, I get it. 5 and 6, not acceptable, right? That's why I made the decision that I made. But I go back in terms of the investment and the commitment that we made, the investments that we've already made in the infrastructure of the program. So I think it is. Is there a lot of work to do? Absolutely. And I acknowledge that, but we will do the work.
Go to Chris and then Brett.
John, a lot of times after a bowl game, AD will extend the coach. Why didn't you extend, sort of after last year? What were you seeing?
Last year?
Yeah, after the bowl game.
I was pleased with the progress that we made, right? 21, we were 5 and 7, 7 and 5 last year. But I wanted to see more, candidly. All right, can we put back-to-back 7 and 5 or better seasons together? We didn't do that.
Do you think you lost any assistant coaches last year with a lot of turnover because of the lack of certainty?
No, I don't.
Brent, for the final question, please.
John, I just want to circle back. You mentioned within the last 48 hours you've had some people step up in terms of donations.
Mm-hmm.
Are these new donors?
Some are new, some are existing donors, but people who are passionate about Syracuse athletics, passionate about the football program, and want to step up and help us.
And you mentioned they wish to remain anonymous at this point, which I respect that, but I guess what's the advantage of that, given that NIL is a very public game?
Well, I think
It's not
yeah,
just NIL, but
anytime a donor contributes, it's up to the donor if they wish to be recognized or not. We've got capital gifts to the Lally Athletics Complex that are anonymous because that was the request of the donor, and we're always going to honor the donor's request. And NIL is no different in that.
John, thank you for your time today. Thank
All
you
right, thanks,
for your
everybody.
feedback.
Happy Thanksgiving.